I was coming from a structured cognitive orientation. It was a big relief, and it's really a rewarding, enriching experience to just realize, not only to think about it, to realize it in every sensory level. Hey, there's something else inside of me. And also in the encounter between people, an intuitive other world of experiences. And if I didn't trust in that so much before. Well, although I would say I had a lot of experiences where this trust was just intuitively, spontaneously living inside of me and just made my experience. But on the usual accustomed cognitive level, I nevertheless didn't trust it. And experiencing him and experiencing this kind of work with him and having many, for me, very, very helpful, rewarding, where he worked with me and so things, I realized, oh, there's something else in which inside of me I can trust much more. But nevertheless, I was never interested, in a sense, in only in this transy world, because I thought, well, on the other side, next morning you have to buy a coffee or whatsoever, and so I was it has to do with my training before, and that I always also, my father had a kind of a small corporation where he worked, and I helped him and worked with my brother together and other people. So I was always very much oriented in this, I have to cope with the world and things like that. And then this only be chubby-dooby-doo world, that was not, for me, it was not reasonable enough. But it was a very good balance I could experience there. And in the beginning, I also was so fascinated also by this kind of strategic and indirect way, which was, so he was the representative of this indirect communication. But more and more, I had this strange feeling with it. For me, it was always a very important question: how do I want to encounter other people? And the answer was usually, I want to encounter and behave towards other people in a way that I would like to have that they would behave towards me when I'm, for example, in a needy state or so. And then I had this feeling, for me, that wouldn't be fitting. If somebody only, with Ericsson that was okay, but that was okay in a sense because I knew, it was not a therapeutic relationship. I was not a client in a sense, I was more in a trainee state, and there I was really very impressed and think by this kind of indirect thing. And when he worked with me, on the next day or in the next moment, I thought, interesting, how indirectly he wanted to invite me to that or that or that. So I had still this kind of a meta level. But with my clients, I had this impression, they don't have it always there, especially when they are in a symptomatic state, so to speak. And so I thought, there's something not fitting enough for me. I have to do something else. Especially also this, for me in my world, it was also the cognitive, the conscious ego level, so to speak, was a very helpful thing. I think I wouldn't have survived in some very bizarre double-bind situations in my life without this cognitive level. So I thought, I don't give it up.
My way was a little bit different than that. And again, I think that what I learned, coming of age in the 60s and just my particular path with meditation is when you got into those incongruent states or double binds, that the best thing would be to find this deeper way of seeing through all the bullshit, so to speak, and seeing through the corruption and seeing through the lies. I mean, that was I think, some of the main counterculture sort of ideas, and so I saw trance as a way to burn through the bullshit, so to speak. And I think for me, and my case, I found that I could do it really well. I don't say that arrogantly, but it's just like, wow, when I do this, I'm really good at it. And I was so happy to discover that I could be good at something and I could connect with these really deep parts of people and touch them and give them a sort of a blessing. You know, I could see this deep place in you, and I can see the truth of who you are, and not all the masks that you may have had to, you know, put on, or other people put on you. And there's something that was so beautiful about that, and that Ericsson gave me a way to do that, that was able to translate some general values into a specific way. I think that sort of, you know, Joseph Campbell sometimes calls the wasteland the people who reject the village reality. And I think, you know, the counterculture was primarily living in a wasteland. Oh, that's bullshit. You know, all the traditional things. We had Nixon and Vietnam and all this stuff. It made my conscious mind a little more cynical. And I was, you know, connecting with Bandler and Gunther, and there was a sort of a cynical attitude about the indirect approach, like you could trick the unconscious, or this person was sort of an idiot that you could, you know, be telling them this story and they wouldn't really know that what you were talking about, but their unconscious would know. And I think that cynical attitude I grew more and more uncomfortable with it, that it was not respectful. And this deeper interest I had in really sincerely letting people know that they, you know, what you were saying, that Ericsson was a mirror to you about, which he was, I think, for so many of us, that you've got this, you're a great person, you've got so many talents, and you have this capacity to really enjoy life and contribute to life. That sort of cynical view that often surrounded the indirect communication, I think, was a counter message to that.
That's right. And that was, I didn't experience with him this cynical part.
No, neither did I. I think it might have been there earlier in Ericsson's career.
That could, yeah, that was
kind
what
of
I had.
The Ericsson that Jay Haley
Exactly, and when I've seen some movie from '64 or whenever, when he was still much more in a younger, powerful way,
right.
Also more ego-oriented, I guess.
Ego-oriented, yeah. So I think that'd probably be better than saying he was cynical. But I think, you know, I heard him say later, when we knew him, that it took him a long time to realize that he couldn't over-control things. That he thought, okay, it's my job as a psychiatrist to have a person be in a better condition, so I can use my ego intellect to intelligently or creatively or skillfully get them to do it. And I think when we knew him, he was already, he made a very interesting development himself, I guess. I think so.
We have experienced and encountered the later Ericsson.
Right.
And I think I would have been not so attracted if I would only have met the earlier Ericsson.
He was in that archetypal wise old man, you know, when we knew him. And he was powerful, but he had such heart. And I think the heart was not fully unconditionally as present, perhaps, in his younger, the power days, if you will.